What is up, bras? Today I'm going to be talking about the most broken guns in Rainbow Six Siege ever. Starting out at number 10, we have Zophia's M762. It came out in Operation White Noise in December 2017, and since then it's had 3 major nerfs, where before the M762 was even at a year old, it had already gotten its ACOG taken away, and then within a year after that, it had 2 major recoil nerfs. One could even argue that the M762 nerf was the reason the LMG meta even started, because once that happened, people just switched to Zo's LMG. But I mean, even as far back as the Creator Cup that I played in February 2020, I was already using both Zo's LMG and the M762, and that was before the 2 major recoil nerfs. So once those recoil nerfs happened, it was an easy choice between that and the LMG. Up next, we have the infamous Ella shotgun, the FO12, which people were saying was busted for a very long time before it was actually nerfed. This shotgun was one of the craziest shotguns in the game, but kept getting overshadowed by Ella's other primary option. The FO12 pretty much only had pros to using, like the fast fire rate, high damage per shell, low damage drop off till the nerf, and a huge magazine to spam around corners. Pretty much the only downside was some vertical kick per shot, but that was well worth the trade-off for what you got. Up next is the TCSG-12, which is Cade and Goyo's shotgun that's had all the same perks as Ella's FO12, but this shotgun also had an ACOG on release. The TCSG-12 is a literal magazine-fed shotgun that holds 11 shells, is semi-auto, had an ACOG, and has been nerfed in 5 different updates since early 2019. Even after the TCSG-12 lost its ACOG, it was still so insane with the 2.0 scope that I even used it in one of my first G Fuel promos in the Parkour Barbecue Grill Clubhouse Spawn Peak. I don't know if anybody remembers that one, but since then it has been nerfed with damage drop-off changes, so unless you hit the headshot, it's not the best option for spawn peeking anymore. And overall, this gun has landed in a pretty balanced spot to where it's still good, but not the insane semi-auto ACOG spawn peeking shotgun that we used to know. Up next is a series of guns that I think a lot of you will be surprised that I'm not putting further up on the list, and it's all LMGs in general, but mainly Finka's LMG. Now, the reason LMGs are not further up on this list is because they haven't changed much at all since launch. They were literally never a problem until Ubisoft just took the other guns and made them so bad that people just started using them. If Ash's R4C, Twitch's F2, heck even Zoe's Barrel were still fun to use, then LMGs would immediately take a hit, but since so many of the other guns just straight up suck, LMGs have been taking over the meta and causing havoc. And LMGs are way more annoying to fight against than Ash's R4C ACOG, but that's a topic for another time. Now, this section is all LMGs in general, but the main one to focus on here is Fuse and Finka's 6P41. And what's funny is Fuse has been out since literally the launch of Siege, and the 6P41 actually received some buffs in the first couple years without any real downside to using it besides a long reload time. This also just shows how long this gun has been crazy, but it wasn't a real issue until Ubisoft just straight up made the other guns suck. The 6P41 has access to almost every sight and scope, has a 100 round magazine, with each one dealing a ton of damage. Right now, the only downside to using it is the 8.5 second reload, and at the time of recording this video, this one right here is the one that's in most of a nerf right now because it's still the LMG meta, so I'll be very curious to see how Ubisoft is going to tackle this soon. Next up is the infamous 416C carbine that belongs to Jaeger, and for nearly the first 2 years of its life, it had an ACOG, which was one of the best spawn peeking tools Siege has ever seen. During this time, it was also the only AR on defense, which really caused a lot of problems for attackers. So then in September 2017, the ACOG was removed, and the 416 still put up a good fight even with the next damage nerfs, and then Jaeger was even changed from a 3-speed to a 2-speed in what I believe was in year 5, but last year the 416 saw its most recent nerf where vertical recoil was increased and the magazine was reduced to 25 from 30. Even though the gun has fallen off quite a lot, there are still a lot of clips out there and a lot of fun memories using this, and to this day I still have a folder of Jaeger ACOG spawn peaks, most of which the spots have been completely nerfed or removed. So we have a tie for 5th here, and up first is another gun that joined Jaeger and lost its ACOG in 2017, and that was the MP7. Right now, both Bandit and Zero have the MP7, with Zero being able to put on the 1.5 scope. But for the first couple years of Siege's life, the MP7 was arguably a better gun than even Jaeger's 416 because it had a faster fire rate and a faster reload time. Jaeger's 416 ACOG seemed to always overshadow the MP7 ACOG because it kind of turned into like the ultimate ranked gun stereotype. But for the veterans out there, I would be very curious to hear if you think the MP7 ACOG was actually better than the 416 ACOG, because I honestly did, and I think a lot of people might be surprised to hear that. After the 2017 nerf where the damage fall off was standardized and the ACOG was removed, the MP7 fell into a pretty balanced point to where it's at now, and it's still a really good gun. So next time you play, just imagine using it with an ACOG, running around as a 3-speed and causing havoc, and you'll be able to imagine how much fun it was as a defender. The weapon that I have tied with the MP7 is the SMG-11, and the SMG-11 actually lost its ACOG a whole year before the MP7 lost its. The SMG-11 used to have a high fire rate, high damage, and ACOG until sometime in 2016 when it was removed, but for the first year of its life, it was absolutely insane, and it's one of the most OG weapons that actually probably not many Siege players will have memories of using. Up next is a weapon that most people will immediately know and probably have experience dying to at least a few times, and it's none other than Ash's R4C that was able to keep its ACOG until 2019, surprisingly, and this was after all the nerfs to the overall damage just straight up didn't work a year prior and people kept using it. The R4C even received a recoil nerf after it lost its ACOG, so you can only imagine how insane this gun was for the first couple years of Siege's life. The combination of Ash and Jaeger was where the original ranked star meme started, and even though tweaks definitely needed to be made with Ash, there were still a lot of good times running around with this broken weapon for a couple of years. So up next is one of the only guns to receive some sort of tweak or nerf every single year from the time the game was released all the way through 2020, and it's Twitch's F2. The F2 is a gun that's always been really good, and it still is really good even after receiving multiple recoil nerfs, a magazine nerf, a damage reduction nerf, and then finally the nerf that put the nail in the coffin and stopped the nerfs for the last couple years, the removal of the ACOG in 2020. The F2 quite literally had everything from fast fire rate, reload times, decent mag sizes, and even the ACOG for quite a while, and it's received some of the most nerfs of any gun in the game. In fact, I can't even think of another gun off the top of my head that's been nerfed as much as the F2 since release. Up next is the gun that provided the defenders with some of the best 1v5 possibilities, and it's the Alda LMG that's on defense. When the gun first came out with Maestro, it had access to a 900 rate of fire, 80 round magazines, and an ACOG, all while being an LMG on defense whose hipfire wasn't even similar to attacker LMGs. In late 2018, they actually nerfed this so that it matched the hipfire of other LMGs, and then in January 2020, the Alda lost its ACOG, and a lot of fun that came with it, but it's still an insanely good gun on defense. It has now fallen in line with the playstyle that it was meant to have. Now finally, in at the #1 spot for the most broken gun in Siege's history is the release version of the Scorpion Evo 3A1. I don't think any other gun has just straight up been this insane on release as the Scorpion, and it's a gun that has received more than one recoil nerf, a damage nerf, and a magazine nerf all in less than a year. The Scorpion used to feel like you were running around like John Wick holding something insanely light, all while having 51 rounds, which is pushing LMG territory, all at the same time having such little recoil that it made any other gun on release feel like you're playing airsoft. Since release, it's definitely fallen in line with a more balanced playstyle. It has a lot of recoil now, and it still does have a fast fire rate with 41 rounds, so it's still fun to use in the right situation. Just think of it this way. This gun never had an ACOG, and I consider it to be the most broken gun in Siege's history. But I am curious to hear what you guys think. Let me know what you think is the most broken gun Siege has ever had. And if you're still watching this video, then thank you guys so much. Please drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace.